الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا. والحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهر على دين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. آمين وبعد. Indeed, all praises for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We seek His guidance, we seek His forgiveness. We put our faith in Him and our reliance upon Him. And we seek refuge in Allah from the evil consequences of our actions. Whomsoever Allah has guided, then there is no one to mislead him. And whomsoever Allah has allowed to go astray, then there is no one to guide him. And we bear witness and we testify that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. And that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is his slave and his messenger. As I begin today's khutbah, I remind myself, as I remind you, that you and I are tied in the covenant between ourselves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in that every word that I am speaking is being recorded by my angels and I'll be asked about on the day of judgment. And likewise, every word that you're listening to today is being recorded by your angels and you too will be asked about on the day of judgment. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His majestic book, says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أم كنتم شهداء إذ حضر يعقوب الموت إذ قال لبنيه ما تعبدون من بعدي قالوا نعبد إلهك وإله آبائك إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق إلها واحدا ونحن له مسلمون. Is it you that were present when death approached Yaqub alayhi salam, Jacob, when he said to his children, who will you worship after me? And they said, we will worship your Lord and the Lord of your forefathers and the Lord of Ibrahim and Ismail and Ishaq, the one God. And we are from amongst the Muslims, or those that submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The conversations that we have in our family gatherings, in our community gatherings, at the barbecues that you'll probably be at this weekend, often the subject of schooling comes up for kids. This is a concern that goes back to all of our prophets. Now, of course, we do everything that we possibly can to position our children for success, both in the dunya as well as the akhirah. And even in the case of a prophet like Nuh alayhi salam, something can happen and a child can go astray. But the fact that you do everything you can has to be there. That's a prerequisite. And so some of the conversations that we'll have is that one brother will say, well, my kids go to Islamic school. And so the other person will attack him and say, well, you know, you're missing out on a really quality education. And they'll list out all the cons of Islamic school. And then somebody will say that my kids go to public school. All the property taxes that we're paying, we're in a blue ribbon school. And then somebody else will point out, well, you know, they're not going to get the Islamic akhlaq and the adab and all of those things. And then a third person will jump in and say, well, you know, we're doing something even better. We're homeschooling our kids, and this is the best. And somebody will jump in and say that, well, aren't they going to be isolated, and all the misnomers around homeschooling and so on and so forth, that they're not going to have social skills and so on and so forth. So everybody gets defensive about the paths that they have chosen for their children. But the concern, and hopefully the concern for all practicing Muslims, is still the same. That after we die, after we pass, what will our children practice? And this was the question that Yaqub alayhi salam is posing in this ayah as his kids are gathered around him while he is on his deathbed. He's asking, who will you worship after I'm gone? When I'm gone and I'm not here to supervise you and monitor you and correct your actions, where will you go with your life? And who will you worship? And what will you make your life about? And he gets a testimony from them before he passes, which gives him this peace of heart and mind that he has done his job as a father, because they say that we're going to worship your Lord and the Lord of your forefathers and the Lord of Ismail and Ishaq and Ibrahim, and we are from amongst the Muslims. So he gets this peace of mind. And so we're doing everything that we possibly can. But some of the scholars, 31 of them, under the supervision of Imam Salah from the Haramain, put together a 12-volume book. And I want to share this with you as a presentation that was given by Imam Asif Harani, who was the former Imam at the Ford's Masjid. And because we have this fiqh, right, especially as a minority living in the United States, and you know, many of you had your graduation today that are joining us. I understand a couple of hours, you just graduated over at Cure Arena. And so congratulations to the South Brunswick High School class of 2022. And we'll discuss a couple of, you know, words of advice in the second khutbah for you as well. But all of the isms, you know, we're in the month of June, so the rainbow people and the liberals and the atheists and everything that you can think of, the perennialists, and so on and so forth, all of this is constantly going to be bombarding, and these are the vices and the tools of shaitan that are going to be attacking our kids and the fabric of our family. And so what are the things that we can do to safeguard ourselves? And so these scholars put together these 5 things. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. The idea is to follow it, do our best as parents, tie our camel, and then we leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first thing that they say is the family environment. Every mother and father is a shepherd, and you're responsible for your flock. And so the family environment is extremely important. As Dr. Israr Ahmed says, rahmatullahi alayh, he says that, if you live in a house where your parents are speaking Urdu or they speak English, the kids are not going to one day just wake up, start speaking Turkish or French. They're going to be, their output is going to be what their input is. And numerous studies have found, outside of the family environment, right, whether your kids go to Islamic school, you know what a lot of people do? They go into autopilot mode, that the Islamic school will teach them adab and behavior. Meanwhile, we're using the worst of language in our household. Guess what the kids are going to pick up? They're not going to pick up Mrs. So-and-so and her etiquettes and language. They're going to follow the parents because they're around you more, right? You have the ability to mold your children. And one of the things that is super, super important is having a dedicated family dinner time. This is, not just from the Muslim studies and books of work, but this is coming from even the non-Muslims. That having a dedicated family dinner time where everyone gets together and is able to talk and have open dialogue is one of the best things that you can do. Nowadays, kids don't play on their own. We have to pay for programs. And when you pay for these programs, you have to drive them to them. Whether it's soccer, it's swimming, it's fencing, whatever it is. And I remember Sheikh Abdullah Oduro from Yaqeen Institute, he was saying that when you're doing these drives, there are things that are on your kids' minds, and it's been mulling over and marinating in their minds for some time. And when they come out, and they're sitting in the passenger seat, or they're sitting in the back seat, and they come out and they verbalize this, right? That's the time that you should especially be paying attention. You should especially be paying attention because they want to know. One of the scholars, he was saying that I do this thing with my kids that, when we drive, I tell them you can ask me anything. If it's about girls, if it's about this, if it's about that, ask me anything. This is AMA time, right? This is AMA to ask me anything, and it's not going to go back to mom. It's not going to go back to anybody. It's going to stay here, right? So this is for, obviously, fathers and their sons. Similarly, the daughters are closer to their mothers, and they're going to have these open and candid conversations. Allow that time for them to get out whatever is on their mind, and then you can go ahead and guide them accordingly. The second thing that these 31 scholars that put together this 12-volume book recommended was that the schooling, right, and this is of their opinion based on their entire life being dedicated to Islam, is that their schooling should be through Islamic school. Now, I'm not here to give a promo for NUI or any of the amazing schools that are in the Central Jersey or North Jersey or South Jersey areas, right? But they say that Islamic school is a fundamental thing that the kids should have because why? 7 to 8 hours are being spent there. And so naturally, the things that happen in a public school, right? The sins, the bad things, if you want to call it, whatever it is, right? That's the normative there. And not only is it the normative there, it's encouraged by the peers over there. And these things may occur in Islamic schools as well, and they do. There's boyfriend-girlfriend problems in Islamic schools. We have drug problems in Islamic schools, right? And if you don't know this, wake up. Wake up. It's happening under your nose. And secondly, if you're a first-generation parent, you have an extra obstacle and challenge, and that is your culture gap. Your kids are first-generation Americans. I've been through this. I'm a product of the Franklin High School, Franklin school system. My kids have gone through Islamic school and homeschooling, so I can speak on all three vantage points, right? Is that this environment is critically important, and this is something that's coming from them. Now, every school has their own flavor, conservative, traditional, some are more modern, some are more liberal, whatever it is, right? You find what works for you, but regardless, it still comes back to the family because that's the supplemental support and the supplemental spiritual enrichment that the kids are going to require that you're pouring into them. And so, if you're out there chasing the dollar and that's all you do, right? We have to wake up and understand that we could lose our kids. You don't want to be in that moment where you get a call from Rutgers University and it's Imam Kesser Chaplain on the phone. And he's calling, he says, you know what, your son thinks that he's a girl. Or you know what, your son thinks that he is gay. Or your daughter thinks such and such. Or your daughter is thinking about leaving Islam. Right? That is very, very parallel to getting a call or a knock on the door that something happened, that your child was in a car accident. Right? Here, they lost their dunya in a car accident. There, they lost their akhirah. Right? And so the environment, again, is super important. Number 3, masjid. The masjids should be youth-oriented. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We're not living in the middle of Mississippi or somewhere where the Islamic community is just starting. You have Ashbal here for the middle schoolers. You have, I think it's Kafila or whatever it's called. I think the name's changed. But you have the Sisters Group. You have NBIC that has very robust programming as well. And throughout, if you go up and down the Route 1 corridor, we are blessed. Now, we're only blessed if your children are participating in these programs. And so keep your kids tied to the masjid, serving the masjid, being a participant in the masjid. And your kids will end up being 2 types. Either they'll be participants in the masjid, right? And that's because you nudge them to go. And even if you force them to go, it's okay. It's okay. You're paying for their housing. You're paying for their food. They're living for free, okay? You have a right to tell them where they get to spend their free time. You have a right to pick their friends. You do, as parents. Don't be so passive and submissive to your kids. It's okay to be friends with your kids, but at the end of the day, they have to understand you're a parent first. You're a parent first, and you're looking out for the best interest of their dunya and their akhirah. Number 4 that these scholars suggest is, of course, their friend circle. So the influence of the peers. And you know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about the person that's working with the coal and the iron. And if you hang around with that person, then of course you're going to have coal dust and all of that on you. And then if you go to the person who sells perfumes, right, then you'll have the smell and the traces of perfume on you. Your friends are exactly the same way. I've heard of stories, right, where families have gotten together in the evening and Maghrib time comes up. Now, for whatever reason, the brothers usually line up, adhan happens, and they pray Maghrib, right? And perhaps maybe 2 women or 3 women out of the 40 that are there separate themselves to pray Maghrib. Now, you have to ask yourself, like, everybody's not on their cycle. Something's clearly broken here. If the moms are not concerned about salah, and those are the daughters and the sons that they're raising, are these the families that you want to surround your children with? And I'm telling you this because it's happening in this community. And we have to wake up to that. And we have to understand that. That who we hang around, the parents, the friends that you choose, and the friends that you choose for your kids is of paramount importance. It's of paramount importance. And number 5, the media that they're consuming. Now every single one of these elements, you can do a separate khutbah on every single one of these, right? And every parent, including myself, and this for myself first, has a challenge with the screens. Because back in the day, what used to happen was we knew, look, we'd watch the Disney afternoon. By the way, Disney is all in on the LGBTQ movement, right? And they're throwing subtle messages at your kids. So be careful of that. Netflix is all in. Every company and corporation that's run under this capitalistic economic system, right, has painted their logo into a rainbow, right? Why? Because it makes dollars and cents. Simple as that. And if they don't, they get canceled. They don't, they get canceled. But we knew when boring programs were coming, right? The cartoons would end from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and then it was Jerry Springer and all this other nonsense, so we go out and play basketball for 2, 3, 4 hours. That doesn't happen today. You know why? on demand. Video, YouTube, Netflix, everything's on demand. If something boring's coming on cable TV, well, who cares about cable? I've got access to all this other stuff that I could watch, right? And so your challenge is even bigger. And so you have to implement timings, and you have to monitor it, and you have to enforce it. And there's softwares that are out there like Bark and Circle and others that can show you, what your kids are getting themselves into when they're consuming media. And this is probably the biggest challenge of our day today. Is the media that they're consuming, because they can go down one rabbit hole, one lizard hole, right? And you could lose them. They start watching videos, debates, right? As kids get more older, they're starting to think more for themselves, philosophical videos, and completely end up an atheist by the end of next week. They can start watching videos and completely end up something that, is unimaginable by the end of next week. And so it's so important to understand the makeup of your child, the personality of your child. Every single one of us as a parent, and you know this, you've got sons and daughters, and if you had to grade them from 1 to 10, there are some children you trust more than others. And you know that. You know that this one, like if she goes off of Sirat al-Mustaqim, I'd be very surprised. And this one, I need to watch a little bit more. And you know that. All kids are made different. Their personalities are different. They're swayed by different things. They're persuaded and coerced by different things. And so you have to be mindful of that. But you'll only do that if you're actively involved as a parent. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our families, our Islamic schools, the kids that are in public school, as well as those that are homeschooling. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us a righteous community of Muslims and believers, so that the next generation dies on La ilaha illallah. Idu Allah yaghfir lakum dhunubakum. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Habibina Mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathiran kathiran kathira. I want to, pivot a little bit and once again congratulate the class of 2022 from South Brunswick High School and everyone else that has graduated from their schools. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ كُلِّيٍّ يَعْمَلُ عَلَى شَاكِلَتِهِ فَرَبُّكُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنْ هُوَ أَحْدَى سَبِيلًا. Say, everyone acts in their own style and manner, but your Lord knows who is best guided on the path. Every single person, every single one of you that has graduated, that's about to graduate, that's going through high school, middle school, and so on, you have a specific genius that's inside of you. And it may not have been discovered yet. You might, you're going through your coursework, you're going through the extracurricular activities, whether it's basketball or MMA or whatever you do. There's some sort of genius inside of you. And now the rest of your life, it's up to you to figure out what that is and how to utilize that to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that could be in the worldly endeavor, whether you're amazing math ability, whether you have amazing artistic ability, whether you have amazing creativity, you have just, the leadership skills. I see our brother Sami Shaban here, right? He walks into a room, mashallah, you understand, like this brother has that charisma, that it factor, and that he naturally pulls people. He's one of the best people that I know, because in college, when I met him, and I think he's responsible for so many others that were around him for doing this, he got us into the habit of praying Fajr at the masjid. He got us into the habit of praying. Imagine on the Day of Judgment when this brother shows up, right? Addalu ila al-khair kafa'ilihi, those who lead to good will have the same reward. Imagine all the prayers that we're doing, he's getting the reward of that passively, right? And so, that goes back to that point about friends. That as you continue on your path and you go to college, whether you go to Rutgers or you go whatever school that you have chosen, a couple of points that I'll give you. Your education doesn't stop here. As a matter of fact, it begins here. Number two, the identity that you were carrying in high school, whether you were with the skateboarders or with the athletic jocks or whatever, you know what you were doing. You were trying to fit in, right? In high school, that's just the thing, right? You're trying to fit in so that you don't stand out, so that people don't make fun of you, so that you have a lunch table that you can sit on, right? And you're not sitting and eating by yourself and so on and so forth. Guess what? In college, good news. You get to erase all of that. You get to reinvent yourself. And so whatever false identity that you were carrying in high school, you can now reinvent yourself. Find the MSA. Find the Muslim Student Association at your college. Find the kids that are practicing, that come from good families, and reinvent your friend circle. If you had bad influences in high school, perhaps they're going to different schools, right? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Because maybe in high school you thought, I can't just leave him, man. I've been friends with him since I was like in 3rd grade. And yeah, we've done some crazy stuff together throughout high school, but that's all right. He's going to Middlesex, I'm off to Princeton, or whatever the case is. This is an opportunity to hit the reset button and reinvent yourself under your Muslim identity. Number 3, maintain your Muslim identity at all costs. Every ism is coming for you, and it's already here. And so it's your job to be firmly rooted. And again, it's going to come back to the companionships that you maintain. And sometimes, I want you to understand that you young people will be in the minority, right? Ibrahim alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls him an ummah of one. Sometimes you'll be in the minority. Everybody's going to the party, and you know haram stuff is going to happen there. Or everyone is going here, or everyone is doing that, and you know haram things are going to take place. And you may be in the minority, right? It's okay for you to have a spinal cord and respect yourself and not participate in those things, right? And the best way you'll do this is your friends, your parents are not going to be there. Your parents aren't going to be there anymore, right? They can't look over your shoulders anymore. They're expecting that what they poured into you over all of these years is now hopefully going to start to manifest now. Right? There's this movie, Dangal. You ever see it? Amir Khan movie? Where he throws the girls into the water, right? And she remembers this scene much later when she's in a wrestling match. Right? It's a father who brings up these 2 girls. They become Olympic wrestling champions. And during that training, he throws them in the water and he says, Papa hamesha nahi honge. Right? Apni jang khud se larni hogi. Meaning that I'm not always going to be there for you. There's going to be times that you're going to have to fight your own battles. And so remember that when you're in the minority, you're in the companionship, you're in the level of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And sometimes you will be in the minority. A lot of times that'll happen. And finally, for these people, the Prophet ﷺ said, فَتُوبَ لِلْغُرَبَاءِ, and glad tidings to the strangers. And it's the hadith of al-ghuraba, those that Islam came as something that was strange or different, and it will return as something that is strange. And Allah gives glad tidings to the strangers, right? Sometimes, you understand that you stand out. Your deen elevates you. It doesn't debase you. You don't stand out on the bottom. You stand out on the top because you have guidance from the heavens. You have guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the best of creation, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So I know I've gone way over my time, and we'll make dua inshallah. Allahumma ighfir lil-muslimina wal-muslimat wal-mu'minina wal-mu'minat al-ahya'i minhum wal-amwat innaka samiyyun qareebun mujibu da'wat. Allahumma rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar wa adkhilna al-jannata ma'al abrar ya azizu ya ghafar ya rabbal alamin. Allahumma taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.